Hey everybody, I'm going to be making this video to show you, or just to read through this article with you like I did yesterday, um, if you need that support. And I'll go through the directions a little more in detail too. So this is part 2 of the Zora Neale Hurston introduction. You're going to be doing this on Pear Deck instead of, I guess I'll go through it on here then, so you can see. But yeah, you're going to be on Pear Deck and not on Google Slides like you were yesterday, a little bit different. You can see there's a few people on right now. So this is part 2 of the Zora Neale Hurston introduction. So the purpose is to learn about Zora Neale Hurston's life and understand the experiences that influenced her writing. So today, for directions, we will continue learning about the life of Zora Neale Hurston. When we begin reading her fictional works, we will identify which parts of her life show up in her writing. For each slide, read the paragraph and answer the questions on the following slides. There will be a video posted of me reading, which is what this is. So the warm-up today is, well, actually, sorry, maybe I'll go here. The warm-up is to identify who these two actors are, and if you can name a movie that they're in, it's a bonus point. You probably recognize them. All right, jumping into it. So paragraph 6. This is taking off from what we learned yesterday about Zora Neale Hurston, the same article. Zora's maternal grandmother agreed with her son-in-law about Zora. She was freed from slavery and could not get used to even looking at a white person in the eye. Zora would wave down white people begging for rides. This would upset her grandmother. However, Zora's mother, Lucy, did not want to squinch, which means like lessen, Zora's spirit. Lucy told her and all her siblings to jump at the sun. We might not land on the sun, but at least we would get off the ground. All right, the question for that paragraph is asking about that last quote, what her mother said to Lucy, or what her mother said to Zora. What her mother said to her, I guess. Jump at the sun. We might not land on the sun, but at least we would get off the ground. What does this quote mean to you? Think about that. Why did she tell Zora that? She encouraged her to do this. Look at what was said before that if you think, this part will definitely help you with that, understanding what that quote means. All right. Paragraph 7. Unfortunately, Zora's mother, Lucy, passed away. Zora was only 13, and it was a terrible and traumatic loss for her. Zora saw her mother's death as the end of a happy and important part of her life. Shortly after her mother's death, her father sent her to Jacksonville, Florida, where she encountered for the first time the Jim Crow laws of the South. The white folks around Eatonville had welcomed Zora into their homes, so she was shocked to meet white people who weren't fans of hers. So we've been talking about these Jim Crow laws of the South. Basically, all of this is what eventually led to the Civil Rights Movement, where schools were segregated based on, like, white people had a school, black people had schools, but they were often, like, worse schools, and sitting at the back of the bus and having certain water fountains that only white people could use or only black people could use. So those are examples of these Jim Crow laws that Zora's becoming familiar with, that she was not aware of before, or didn't experience before at least. So the question for paragraph 7 just asks you to summarize this paragraph in one complete sentence. All right, paragraph 8. Soon after her father remarried, Zora and her stepmother Maddie did not get along. In fact, she went to a boarding school in Jacksonville where she was to work her way by scrubbing floors and working in the kitchen. Her father never sent for her and asked the school to adopt her. Paragraph 8 question. Zora has experienced a lot of difficult things so far at this point in her life and is only 13 years old. What is one of the difficulties she has experienced that you can relate with? So, like, what is one of the things she's gone through that you've also experienced, if you can relate with her in that? If you cannot relate with any of the things she's gone through, then name 3 things she has gone through. It could be about her mother, her experiencing racism, her having to go to a boarding school, not feeling appreciated. All of those are things that she has gone through already, and she's only 13. All right, paragraph 9. She eventually returned to Eatonville around the age of 19 because she had nowhere to go. Zora had to work as a housekeeper where she failed miserably. Oops, sorry. She felt unloved, had little to read, and went to school sometimes. She had no home and no peace because her stepmother would not let her live with them. Later she wrote, "There is something about poverty that smells like death. People can be slave ships in shoes." All right, the question for this one, reflect on that quote. There is something about poverty that smells like death. People can be slave ships in shoes. So either explain how you connect with this quote or explain what Zora Neale Hurston means by this quote. Okay, again, if you don't know what that quote means, if it's confusing to you, go back and read about this paragraph, or this sentence, I mean. Okay? All right. Paragraph 10. Eventually, Zora moved to her brother's to live, but ended up moving back to Eatonville with her father and stepmother. They eventually divorced. Hurston moved to New York City's Harlem neighborhood in the 1920s. Right? That's where the Harlem Renaissance started. This is when she moved to Harlem. Sorry about that. I forgot my office hours were still open. She became a fixture in the area's thriving art scene, with her apartment reportedly becoming a popular spot for social gatherings. Hurston befriended the likes of Langston Hughes and Countee Cullen, among several others, with whom she launched the short-lived literary magazine Fire. All right, this one is going to kind of be different. You have to make a drawing that relates to something you learned in paragraph 10. I'm terrible at drawing, so if you feel like this is going to be hard, just try your best anyways, okay? I believe in you. All right, last paragraph. For years to come, Zora published multiple books, plays, poems, and essays. She published her first novel, Jonah's Gourdvine, in 1934, and her most famous work, Their Eyes Were Watching God, in 1937. For all her accomplishments, Hurston struggled financially and personally during her final decade. She kept writing, but she had difficulty getting her work published. A few years later, Hurston had suffered several strokes and was living in the St. Lucie County welfare home. The once famous writer and folklorist died poor and alone on January 28, 1960, so right before the Civil Rights Movement, and she was buried in an unmarked grave in Fort Pierce, Florida. All right, last question. This one asks you to look up one of Zora Neale Hurston's books, plays. I wrote books twice. Books, plays, or poems, and list it here. Explain why this is the one you chose. All right. So hopefully this all makes sense. We're going to continue learning about Zora Neale Hurston, but this gives you all a lot of information about her life and what inspired her to write. It's interesting that she was not really appreciated in her time, but then now she's super famous and is thought of as one of the most significant figures of the Harlem Renaissance. So, all right, everybody, let me know if you need anything. I'll be here all day, office hours until 11, but then you can always email me or Schoology message or anything else. All right, everybody, good luck.